Have you ever lain in bed, wanting to fall asleep, yet your mind is spinning with 1,000 thoughts? You ask yourself, am I good enough? Am I on the right path? It's exhausting, isn't it? But more than 2,000 years ago, the Buddha gave us a secret called emptiness. It may sound abstract, but in fact it is the key that helps you release anxiety and find peace right in this moment. In today's video I am going to share with you some wondrous stories of Zen to explore that secret together. In a small temple nestled among peaceful mountain ranges, there lived a young monk named Chen. Every night, while his brothers had already fallen asleep, Chen lay awake, his eyes wide open in the darkness. In his head rang ceaseless questions. Am I a good monk? Am I making progress? Do I really deserve this path? Those questions repeated like a whirlwind. The more he tried to chase them away, the more fiercely they returned. Chen felt suffocated, as if he were carrying a heavy backpack he could not remove. One morning, tired and discouraged, Chen went to find his master, Master Lin. The master quietly swept the temple courtyard. Each stroke of his broom was gentle. Leisurely, like a breath, Chen sighed and confessed, "Master, I cannot sleep in peace. My mind is constantly filled with questions about myself. It feels as though there is a self behind me, forcing me to prove, to strive, to be perfect. I am truly exhausted." Master Lin paused, lifted his head, and looked at Chen with a benevolent gaze. Then asked, "Chen, when you hear the temple bell ring in the morning, where do you think that sound is? Is it in the bell? In the air? In your ears? Or in your mind?" Chen hesitated. "I think it is in the bell, Master." The master smiled. The bell simply sits there, silent, with no sound at all. Only when someone strikes it does the sound resonate. That sound also needs the air to carry it, your ears to receive it, and consciousness to recognize it. If any one of these conditions is missing, would the sound still exist? Chen suddenly fell still. The master continued, his voice warm like the wind. "What we call hearing is actually the meeting of many conditions: the bell, the strike, the air, the ears, the mind. It arises naturally like a flowing stream. So, where is the hearer? Is there an independent I standing apart directing the hearing?" Chen suddenly felt his heart sway. All this time he had thought there was a separate self, a self that had to be capable, worthy, to prove its existence. But in that moment, he realized, just like the bell's sound, the self he clung to was just an illusion, composed of countless conditions. A relief washed over him like cool water on a summer day. Chen whispered softly, "Master, it turns out all along I was just carrying a shape created by my own mind." Master Lin nodded. "That's right, Chen. You don't need to carry that heavy self on your shoulders. Let it dissolve like the echo of the bell, so you can realize that you were free all along." Once Chen found peace, a new young monk arrived at the temple, named Dao. Unlike Chen, who had been tormented by questions about the self, Dao had a curious habit. He liked to categorize and draw boundaries around everything. Every afternoon, Dao would sit in the temple garden, pointing at each thing and whispering, "This is a rose. That is a chrysanthemum. This is soil. That is water. This is the sky. That is the foliage." He believed that by clearly defining the boundaries of all things, he could grasp the order of the world and thereby find peace. But the more Tao categorized, the more uneasy he felt. Because each thing brought along countless others. Soil includes sand, gravel, compost, humus. The sky includes clouds, wind, light. The boundaries Tao tried to erect were always being broken. One autumn day, Tao came to Master Lin, who was sitting by a small pond, watching yellow leaves fall. Tao asked honestly, "Master, I understand there is no separate self, but I still believe that external things must exist separately from one another. The leaf is a leaf. The water is water. How can they not be separate?" Master Lin gently bent down and lifted a red leaf that had just fallen onto the pond's surface. He asked, "Tao, tell me, where does this leaf end and where does the water begin?" Tao answered quickly, "That is easy, Master. The leaf is the leaf. It floats on the water. The boundary is clear." The Master smiled, his eyes gentle. Could that leaf exist if the tree had not produced it? Tao paused. "No, Master. Could that tree live without soil, rain, and sunshine?" Tao was silent, also not. "Then where did this soil come from?" The Master continued. "Was it not formed from countless layers of leaves, branches, and living beings that once decayed? And the rain, did it not come from the sea, from clouds thousands of miles away? The sunlight on the leaf, is it not from the sun that has shone for millions of years?" Tao suddenly felt his mind tremble. The leaf in the Master's hand was no longer just a leaf. Within it were the sun, rain and wind, earth, the sea, time, and even the universe. Master Lin gently placed the leaf back onto the surface of the pond, letting it drift with the water's current. "Tao, do you see, what we call a leaf is only a meeting point where many conditions converge. It is neither separate nor independent. Likewise, nothing in this world truly exists alone." Tao watched the leaf drifting on the water, and suddenly a wondrous feeling rose within him. "So it turns out, Master, what I thought were boundaries are nothing more than illusions. Everything is connected, intertwined like rivers merging into one another." One evening at sunset, the three of them, the Master and his two young students, sat on a hill, watching the sun slowly disappear behind the mountains. A brilliant orange light bathed the sky, turning the earth below into a golden carpet. Chen whispered, "Master, I now understand there is no separate self, and no object that exists independently. But I still have one question. If there is no subject and no object, then where does experience take place? Who is the one seeing this sunset?" Tao nodded in agreement. "Yes, Master. It is clear that I am seeing the sky, and the sky is appearing before my eyes. If there is no me and no sky, then who is seeing what?" Master Lin smiled gently, his eyes sparkling in the fading light. "Chen, Tao, let me ask you. That orange color, and your act of seeing it, can the two exist separately?" Chen thought for a moment, then replied, "The orange is in the sky, and the act of seeing happens in my eyes. I think they are different." The Master softly shook his head and pointed toward the horizon. "Try closing your eyes. If you cannot see it, does that orange color still exist for you?" Chen fell silent. He realized that the moment he closed his eyes, the color vanished from his experience. Tao interjected, "But Master, even if I close my eyes, the sun and the sky are still there." The Master nodded gently. "True, But how do you know that? Is it not because you have seen the sun and sky before? And now you assume they must still be there? Every bit of evidence you have for their existence has come from the act of seeing. So, tell me, can the color orange and the act of seeing it ever truly be separate? Dao was shaken. For the first time, he saw a truth so simple. Color and the experience of seeing it are two sides of the same event. The master continued, the subject and the object, they are like two sides of the same coin. We call one side the seer and the other the seen. But in reality, both are just two names for a single process, experience. He paused for a moment, then offered another example. Think of a screen in front of you. On it, scenes of joy, sorrow, tragedy, and happiness appear. The content keeps changing, but the screen remains the same. That screen allows all images to appear. But can you point to the screen and the image as truly separate things? An image cannot exist without the screen, and the screen is never apart from the images it shows. Chen let out a soft sigh, eyes brimming with tears. I understand now, Master. All this time I believed there was a me here and a world out there. But it turns out, they are one and the same, a single display within the space of awareness. Dao looked at the glowing orange sky, his heart growing still like a calm lake. So the seer, the seen, and the seeing were never truly separate. Master Lin smiled warmly, his voice deep and soothing in the twilight. You have just touched one of the deepest secrets revealed by the Yogacara teachings. The division between subject and object is merely an illusion. In reality, there is only the vast, unending flow of consciousness. Many full moons had passed since the day Chen freed himself from the worry of sleeplessness. And Dao let go of his habit of categorizing the world. Both young monks had grown more serene, their footsteps across the temple courtyard now as light as the wind. But then, on a quiet evening, Chen asked a new question. Master, if there is no separate self, no independent object, and even subject and object are just one process, then who are we? Truly? Dao nodded. We have understood the dissolving of boundaries. But one thing still troubles me. If everything is just a coming together of conditions, is there anything in us that is truly enduring? Master Lin gazed up at the star-filled sky, then smiled kindly. Imagine a great mirror. By its nature, it is clear, bright, and capable of reflecting all things perfectly. But over time, a layer of dust builds up, making it seem cloudy. People look at it and assume the mirror is dirty, broken, or no longer able to reflect. But what is the truth? That pure, radiant nature was never lost, only hidden for a time. Chen whispered softly. You mean, there is such a mirror within us too? The master nodded. Yes, that is your Buddha nature, the original mind. Clear, pure, vast, and unbound by fear or anger. But it can be clouded by layers of habit, desire, and fear. When we meditate, practice mindfulness, and nurture compassion, that is when we gently wipe the dust from the mirror. Dao pondered this, then asked, but if that pure mind is always within us, why are we still so easily swept away by suffering? The master offered another image. Imagine a jar of precious honey surrounded by a thick swarm of bees. The honey is always sweet and pure. But if you focus only on the bees, you will never dare to reach for it. Likewise, Within every person is sweetness and clarity. But the bees, anger, greed, and doubt, keep us from touching it. If we learn to be still and gentle, we can move through the swarm and taste the sweetness that was always there. Chen and Dao sat in silence for a long time. In that moment, both felt a gentle warmth spreading through their chests, as if they had just touched something deep within that had always seemed so distant. Chen whispered, "Master, I used to think I had to work hard to become someone else. Someone worthy. But now I see, I only need to wipe away the dust, peel off the outer layers, and the peace I was looking for was already within me." Dao smiled. "And so, we do not need to go searching for enlightenment somewhere far away. It has always been here, within our own hearts." Master Lin looked at the two young monks, his gaze as vast as the sky. "You have understood. Buddha nature is not something to be achieved, but something already present in all beings. If you have the courage to clear away the dust, you will see the mirror's clarity has never left you." One night, under a silver bright moon, Chen and Dao sat by the temple's porch, watching clouds drift slowly across the sky. After many months of practice, their minds had grown calmer. Yet questions still remained. Dao softly asked, "Master, we have come to understand that the self is not real, that objects are not independent, and that both subject and object are just two faces of the same experience. But I still do not quite understand, what, then, is this world?" Master Lin looked up at the sky, his voice slow and calm. "Think of a dream. In a dream, you might see mountains, oceans, people, events. All of it feels vivid and real. You might laugh, cry, feel pain or joy inside it. But when you wake up, you realize everything in that dream, even the you inside it, was created by your own mind." Chen nodded, remembering, "That's true. I once dreamed I was being chased. But when I woke up, I realized no one had ever been chasing me at all." The master smiled. "You see? The world you are living in now has that same dreamlike quality. It is not nothingness, we can still feel it, still experience it, but it is also not solid or everlasting. Everything, every event, every joy and sorrow, is like a dream image. It arises through conditions, and disappears when those conditions change." Dao gazed at the moonlight reflecting on the pond. "So, all the things I have clung to, success, failure, praise, blame, gain, and loss, they are no different from dreams?" The master gently nodded. "Exactly. When you are still in the dream, everything feels so serious. But when you wake up, you laugh and realize it was all just a dream. This world is the same. Live fully, but do not grasp. Love deeply, but do not bind. Experience life, but do not let its illusions imprison you." Chen closed his eyes, overwhelmed by a lightness he had never known. "Master, it feels like I have just woken up from a long dream. I no longer want to struggle with shadows. I just want to smile, like the moon shining down without holding on to anything." The master looked at his two students, the moon casting a gentle glow across their hair. He softly said, "You have understood. There is no need to reject or avoid the world. Simply see its dreamlike nature clearly, and you will be free amidst everyday life, like someone awakened within a dream." That is peace. One winter morning, with mist still blanketing the worn tiles of the temple roof, Chen and Dao walked down the mountain to help the villagers harvest the final rice crop of the year. It was during that trip that they witnessed a lesson they would likely never forget. In the small village at the mountain's foot lived a woman named Mai. She was kind and hardworking, but recently had been worn down by relentless loss, failed crops, a husband who left for a faraway place, and a young child plagued by constant illness. Every night, she lay awake with red, swollen eyes, asking herself why life had been so unfair, why so many burdens had fallen onto someone as fragile as her. In her despair, she came to the temple, crying as she asked, "Master, what wrong have I done to suffer like this? It feels like the whole world is against me, like I am a helpless victim drifting in this stormy life." Master Lin listened patiently, his gaze kind but quiet. Then he gently asked Chen and Dao to come along, and together they brought Mai to the riverbank, where the still water reflected the drifting clouds above. He picked up a handful of earth and dropped it into the flowing river. The dirt scattered, blending into the water. Then he said, "Do you see? That bit of soil, once thought to be separate, has become part of the river. No more boundaries, no more separation. Your suffering is the same. It is not the private burden of a small, isolated self, but the result of countless conditions: the weather, the harvest, your loved ones, society, and all the causes from both past and present. You believe you must carry it all alone, but the truth is, you are simply standing in a flowing current, and that current does not belong to you alone." Dao suddenly realized this echoed the lesson their master had once taught about the leaf on the surface of the pond. And Chen remembered his sleepless nights, when he too felt crushed by the weight of a self, until he saw that self was only an illusion. The master continued, "If you believe in a separate self, then of course suffering will feel like a heavy rock pressing down on your shoulders. But if you see that all things are merely conditions coming together, then you will realize suffering is like a passing cloud. It comes and goes. It gathers and dissolves, nothing is permanent. The key is not to control or erase it, but to see its dreamlike nature clearly, so that you are no longer swept away by it." Mai listened. Her tears still fell, but her eyes slowly softened. She looked up at the river and saw the white clouds drifting in its reflection. And then, quietly, she said, "If suffering is just like drifting clouds, then maybe I can let it float away. I do not have to hold onto it forever." Chen and Dao stood silently beside her, but inside, it was as if a light had begun to shine. They realized that the teaching of emptiness was not meant only for quiet meditation halls, but to help people even in the most ordinary moments, in the tears, the chaos, the everyday world. It was a reminder that nothing is truly permanent. Nothing is truly heavy, except the chains our own minds imagine and cling to. And so, on that winter morning, by the small riverbank, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the mist, a poor and weary woman found a moment of peace. 2 young monks gained a living lesson, and Master Lin smiled once again. For he knew, awakening is not found in distant philosophies, but in that one moment when a person realizes suffering, like a dream, was never as real as we believed. One afternoon, as Chen and Dao sat on the temple steps, they asked Master Lin, "Master, we have seen the truth about the self, about all things, about interdependence, and the luminous nature of Buddha mind. But out there, the world today is full of pressure. Some worry about survival. Others chase fame and fortune. And many are drowning in jealousy, comparisons, and anxiety. Can the teaching of emptiness truly help them? Can it soothe the storms of modern life? Master Lin stayed silent for a long while, then slowly began to tell a story. In a big city, I once met a young man. He worked at a company, spent 8 hours a day staring at a screen, buried in deadlines, pressured by his boss, surrounded by competition. At night, he would lie in bed scrolling through his phone, looking at people who were richer, more attractive, seemingly happier, and inside, it felt like a fire was burning. Every night he would toss and turn. Why am I not as talented as them? Why have I not succeeded? Why does my life feel so stuck? He thought about quitting his job, and even briefly considered giving up on everything, because he felt like a failure. Chen and Dao listened quietly, their eyes heavy, because they saw the young man's story was not so different from their own sleepless nights of the past. The master continued. I asked him, who is suffering? What self is carrying all this pressure? He was shocked. He had never asked himself that question before. I said, deadlines, criticism, comparisons, they're just waves passing through. But you believed there was a small self who had to carry it all. And so every wave became a waterfall crashing down on your head. Try letting go of the idea of I, and you will see, pressure is just like the sound of a temple bell. It rings because of many conditions: your job, your boss, your culture, your past expectations. It does not belong to you alone. And there is no self being crushed beneath it. Once you see that clearly, pressure dissolves like clouds in the sky. That young man broke down in tears, because he suddenly felt light, like he had put down a heavy backpack of stones he thought he had to carry for life. Master Lin looked at Chen and Dao, his voice as soft as the wind. In today's world, people chain themselves with comparisons. They see others with houses, cars, prestige, and they think, I am falling behind, I am not enough. But that I is nothing more than a bundle of thoughts and memories. It is not real. Once you realize that, competition turns into compassion, because you see that everyone is trapped in the same dream. The wealthy fear losing what they have. The famous live in anxiety under the spotlight. No one escapes suffering as long as they believe in a separate self. But when we understand emptiness, we no longer need to chase or fight, because we know all things are like reflections on water, shimmering, but impossible to grasp. Chen bowed his head and whispered, Master, I see now that your teachings are not just for us monks in the temple, but for everyone out there, in the noisy cities. The master gently nodded. That is right, Chen. Emptiness is not about running away from life, but about living in the world without being swept away by it. That young man, after understanding this, returned to work, but instead of fearing deadlines, he saw them as drumbeats, simply part of the rhythm. He stopped comparing himself to others and began to see the web of conditions. That person's success was the result of many causes: family, environment, opportunity, even luck, and he himself was flowing in his own current, with fruits that would bloom in their own time. When the mind is calm, even hard work feels lighter. Dao felt a wave of emotion rising in his chest. So it turns out, modern suffering is not so different from our own past. It all comes from believing in a separate self. If people could see the dreamlike nature of pressure, they too might find freedom. The master smiled, looking far into the setting sun. Exactly. The noisier the world becomes, the more people need a quiet space inside. And the teaching of emptiness is that space, where pressure dissolves. And the original mind is rediscovered. Anyone can practice this, even in the middle of a bustling city. All it takes is to pause. Breathe in, breathe out, and remember, there is no self being crushed, only waves passing through. That spring, in the village, there was an old man named Tam. He had lived a kind and hard-working life, devoted to his small farm and his loving wife. But just as spring began, his wife fell gravely ill and passed away, leaving him alone in their quiet house, with long afternoons empty of familiar laughter. No one waiting at the dinner table. Every day, he leaned on his cane and walked to the porch, gazing out at the fields, his eyes clouded with tears, his shoulders trembling like grass in the wind. One day, he came to the temple and sat before Master Lin. His voice choked. "Master, we were together for 70 years. We had never once been apart. Now that she is gone, it feels like half my body has disappeared. Everything feels meaningless. Even breathing feels like a burden. How do I bear such a loss?" Chen and Dao sat nearby, their hearts trembling, because they had never faced a pain as great as death. The old man's words pierced through them like needles. Master Lin quietly poured a cup of tea. Steam drifted gently in the afternoon air. Then he said softly, "Tam, close your eyes and remember your beloved wife. Where do you see her?" The old man closed his eyes, his voice quivering. "I see her sitting on the porch. I see her smile. I see her cooking. Everything appears clearly in my mind." The master nodded. "You see, her image lives in your mind, not outside." "What does that mean?" "It means that even when she was alive, your experience of her was already within your consciousness. And now, even after she has passed, that memory still lives. It has not disappeared. What we called her was always a gathering of many conditions: breath, eyes, voice, memories, love. All of that has now dissolved, but not vanished. It has simply returned to the great river of causes and conditions." The old man wept, but now he listened more deeply. The master continued, "Imagine a wave on the ocean. While it exists, we call it a wave. We love it, we miss it, but when it becomes still, has it truly disappeared? It has simply returned to the ocean, become water once more, and someday, it will rise again as another wave. Your wife is like that. She has not vanished. She has only changed form, returned to the ocean of life. The pain comes from believing she must always exist in the way you once knew. But love itself never disappears. It has already soaked into you, into your children, into the breeze, the sunlight, into the field where she once planted seeds. You have lost her form, but not her love." Chen sat motionless, feeling the master's words thunder silently in his heart. Dao wept openly, for he realized that love and death are just two sides of the same illusion. Old Tam, still trembling, his eyes wet, began to soften. He whispered, "So, she never really left me. She is still here, in every breath, in every tear, in every corner of our field." Master Lin placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, his voice like a spring breeze. "That is right. Death is just a new name for a journey. One who truly understands emptiness no longer fears loss. Because they know, no one ever truly arrives. And no one ever truly leaves. There is only the endless flow of interbeing. And love forever remains. Those words echoed like a temple bell through the air, leaving a warm resonance in every heart. Chen and Dao bowed deeply. Because in that moment, they understood. The greatest lesson of emptiness is not abstract philosophy, but its power to ease the deepest pain a human heart can feel, the fear of loss and of death. After many months of study and practice, on a summer morning, Master Lin sent Chen and Dao down to the village to help the locals, carrying buckets of water, sweeping courtyards, and fixing the leaking roof of a small home. At first, both young monks found the work dull. Carrying heavy buckets of water from the well made their shoulders ache. Their backs were soaked in sweat from clearing piles of rotting straw. Their hands turned red and sore from handling rough roof tiles. Chen silently wondered, is the path to awakening really just about doing chores like this? If every day is like this, how will I ever get closer to enlightenment? Dao furrowed his brow. We have studied deep truths, emptiness, Buddha nature, the dreamlike nature of reality. And yet now we are stuck with mundane, ordinary tasks? When the day's work was done, they brought their concerns to the master. Master Lin did not answer right away. Instead, he placed a steaming bowl of porridge before each of them and said, "Eat." Chen and Dao began eating, still harboring frustration, but as the warm, sweet porridge slid down their throats and their morning hunger eased, both of them let out a quiet sigh, and their hearts began to settle. The master smiled. You see, happiness is not always found in lofty ideas. Sometimes, it is simply a warm bowl of porridge when you are hungry, a cool breeze when you are tired, or the laughter of children in the village courtyard. You search for enlightenment far away, but forget that every step, every breath, every simple task can be a doorway to peace. When you carry water, you can feel each cool drop touch your skin. See how water is the gathering of clouds, rivers, and sky. When you repair a roof, you can hear the sound of tiles meeting. Remember that each tile is earth, fire, and the hands of countless workers. When you sweep the courtyard, each dry leaf reminds you of impermanence, of constant change. Everything is Dharma. Every moment is a lesson. You do not need to go far to find peace, it is here. In the simplest moments, Chen was stunned. He remembered all those sleepless nights chasing progress, and suddenly laughed, realizing how much he had overlooked right in front of him. Dao looked at his now empty bowl, and felt a warmth spread through his body, as if the whole universe was present in each drop of porridge. They both bowed deeply, for they understood now. The teachings they thought belonged only in deep meditation halls were hidden in every breath of daily life. Master Lin gently nodded, his eyes kind. Remember, people search for happiness as if looking for treasure at the bottom of the ocean. But in truth, happiness is like air, always around you. Just stop, take a deep breath, and you are already full. Enlightenment is not a destination. It is awakening in every small act. When washing dishes, sweeping the floor, eating porridge, breathing, if you are awake, you are already living in enlightenment. And on that simple morning, beneath a modest roof, with a bowl of porridge and the sound of birdsong in the trees, Chen and Dao found a happiness that required no searching, a quiet joy, present in the here and now. Years passed since the day Chen and Dao first arrived at the temple in the mountains. Now, the young novices had grown into monks, their eyes brighter, their steps more grounded, yet in their hearts remained one final question, unanswered. After all the teachings on emptiness, Buddha nature, the illusion of the world, and the beauty of present peace, what was the final purpose of this path? If life is but a dream, then why do we live it? One sunset evening, as the last light painted the forest gold, Chen and Dao knelt before Master Lin and humbly asked, "Master, we have learned so much. But please, tell us the most important truth, the final teaching you want to leave us with. Something we can carry for the rest of our lives." Master Lin sat in silence for a long time, his gaze resting on the horizon where the sun slowly dipped behind the mountains, its final light melting into the sky. Then he spoke, his voice deep and warm, like a bell echoing through time. "You have learned that the self is not real, that nothing exists independently, that subject and object are just two sides of the same process, that your original mind is luminous, and that this world is like a dream. But if you stop at seeing only emptiness, you may fall into coldness, into a sense of nothingness. So the final teaching I want you to remember is this: that very emptiness is the foundation of infinite love. Because there is no separate self. There are no walls between you and others. Because nothing stands alone, you begin to see everything as one body. Because subject and object are not separate. When you smile at the world smiles back at you. Because your original mind is luminous. Deep down, everyone carries the seed of awakening and deserves to be loved. And because the world is dreamlike, you do not fear loss, you simply cherish each moment while it is here." Chen and Dao remained silent, their hearts trembling with the weight of those words. The master continued, "Remember, the path of practice is not to escape the world, nor is it only for finding peace for yourself. It is to return to the world, bringing your understanding and compassion with you. When you see emptiness clearly, you will see that the suffering of others is your own suffering, that the joy of others is your own joy. Then compassion will no longer be something you try to feel, it will pour forth on its own. Like a river after the rain. That is complete awakening." Then the master fell silent, closing his eyes, letting the two students absorb the depth of each word. Chen felt hot tears streaming down his cheeks, for he realized that all those sleepless nights, all the doubts about his worth, had led him to this moment, the moment he no longer felt like a separate, lonely being, but a part of the human river, of the boundless universe. Dao bowed deeply too, his heart overflowing with wordless gratitude, for he knew that from this day forward, his path was not just to learn, but to share that light with those still lost in the dark. The sun disappeared behind the trees, but in their hearts, a new sun had risen, the sun of awakening, the sun of boundless love. And in that moment, the Master's final teaching echoed like an eternal blessing. See emptiness, so you may love more deeply, live more fully, and fear nothing ever again. After that deeply moving sunset, a new flame began to glow in the hearts of Chen and Dao. But it was not a flame to keep for themselves. It urged them to bring light back to the world. One day, Master Lin called them to the temple porch. where a gentle breeze stirred and the distant bell echoed softly. He said, "You have learned enough. You have lived through 10 autumns and winters by my side. Now it is time for you to descend the mountain, to return to the world, not only to be tested, but to plant seeds of compassion upon the soil of humanity." Chen's heart sank for a moment. He had grown used to the quiet mountain forests. Dao was unsure, afraid he lacked the wisdom to help others. But Master Lin smiled. "Do not worry. A river does not keep its waters for itself. It flows to nourish the land, to water crops, to sustain life. The knowledge, wisdom, and compassion you have learned must also flow into the world. Only then are they truly alive." And so, Chen and Dao left the temple. They walked through villages, and later to faraway places. They met farmers straining under sacks of rice in crowded markets, barefoot children running through dusty roads, merchants hustling to survive, young mothers weeping over sick children, old men shivering in loneliness, and youth trapped in noisy cities, suffocating in their pursuit of wealth and status. And wherever they went, they saw one thing in common. People were suffering because they clung to the self, to things as fleeting as clouds. Chen would often sit with those weighed down by despair, listen, and gently say, "Do you know that the burden you carry has no real form? It is only a stack of thoughts, like clouds that come and go." Dao would visit poor neighborhoods, play with the children, teach them to breathe slowly and listen to birds, so they could discover that joy does not require money. It can bloom from the simplest things. People began to notice, whenever Chen and Dao arrived, arguments seemed to stop, the air grew lighter, eyes once hardened by survival began to soften, because people realized they still knew how to smile. Rumors spread. They were called the 2 young monks who bring peace to the villages. But they would always shake their heads and say, "We bring nothing. We only remind people of what they already have." As time passed, someone once asked, "Disciples of Master Lin, what exactly are you doing in the world?" Chen replied, "We are simply living fully in each moment, and sharing that with others." Dao said, "We are only retelling what our teacher once said, that this world is like a dream. And within that dream, we can choose to live with love instead of fear." And one day, they returned to their old temple. Standing once again before Master Lin, they knelt down with tears streaming, but with radiant smiles, and whispered, "Master, we have seen it now. Your final teaching was not meant just to be understood, but to be lived and given away. And only when we gave it away, did we truly understand." Master Lin nodded, his kind eyes holding the entire universe. "You are walking the true path. Never forget to spread happiness. You do not need grand words. Just live your daily life, with peace in each step, with a smile on your face. That is the real homecoming." And in that moment, Chen and Dao realized that their journey had never truly ended. Because wherever there is suffering, there is still a need for the light of emptiness and the boundless love that arises from it. Years passed. Chen and Dao had become grown men. They had walked through villages and cities, sowing seeds of peace and compassion on dry soil. One day, they returned to the temple on the mountain, the place where it all began. As they stepped through the moss-covered gate, the temple bell rang out. It was the same sound from years ago. But now, in their hearts, it was more than a sound. It was a call from the deepest place in the universe. They walked to the temple porch. There sat Master Lin, his hair now white as snow, his frame more fragile, but his eyes still shining like the autumn moon. They knelt down, eyes glistening, knowing that time waits for no one, and that this reunion was a sacred gift. Master Lin looked at his students with a soft smile. You have gone far. You have seen much. You have touched both sorrow and joy in others. Now tell me, after all that you have learned and lived, how do you see this world? Chen answered, his voice trembling. Master, I have seen that the self I once feared is only an illusion. That all things are deeply interconnected. That subject and object were never truly separate. That the original mind is luminous. And that the world is, indeed, like a dream, but more than anything, I have seen that love is the only true path for living fully in this life. Dao continued, his voice quivering. Master, I once believed enlightenment was a destination, some exalted state. But now I know, enlightenment is in every awakened moment. When I wash a bowl, carry water, smile at a child, or hold the hand of someone in pain, enlightenment is not leaving the world, it is dissolving into it. So that there is no longer any boundary between me and the world. Hearing this, Master Lin closed his eyes. His voice rose like the wind. You have understood. When you were young, I taught you about emptiness like peeling layers of an onion, the self. Objects, duality, Buddha nature, the dreamlike world. But the final teaching is not in separation, it is in unity. When you truly see that there is no self and other, no inside and outside, no birth and death, then you become one with the universe. You are no longer Chen, no longer Dao, no longer Master Lin. You are life itself, recognizing itself. The sky that evening blazed red. Birds flew overhead, and in that moment, Chen and Dao felt their bodies dissolve. All boundaries they had clung to fell away like dry leaves. What remained was vastness, a boundless space where they were the watcher. The landscape, the sound of the bell, the sky, the wind, everything. They looked at each other, but no longer saw two people. They saw themselves reflected in one another's eyes. They saw the whole universe mirrored in that gaze. Their tears fell, not from sorrow, but from the wonder of union. Master Lin looked at his students. His eyes gleamed like the last candle before it goes out. He whispered, "You have returned. Remember, in the end, no one goes, no one comes. There is only life, vast, endless, and compassionate. When you see that, you are truly free." Then he closed his eyes, breathed one long breath. His face became peaceful, as if asleep. But in that moment, Chen and Dao understood. Their master had merged with the universe. Like a drop of water returning to the ocean. The temple bell rang out into the sunset. Long, clear, and echoing through the mountains. A farewell, a blessing, a silent truth. And from that day forward, Chen and Dao no longer searched for enlightenment. Because they now knew, enlightenment was already here. When teacher, student, the world, and the universe had never truly been apart. After the day Master Lin peacefully closed his eyes, Chen and Dao stood for a long time at the quiet temple porch. The scent of warm tea still lingered in the air. The gentle tapping of a bamboo broom echoed faintly. And the sound of their teacher's laughter in the early mornings seemed as if it had just happened yesterday, and now had become a memory. In their hearts, There was a hollow space, as though they had lost their anchor. But then the temple bell rang once more, echoing long into the afternoon sky. And in that sound, they realized the master had never truly left. He was still present in every breeze, in every drop of dew, in that very bell, and most of all, in their own hearts. They looked at each other and saw it, a shared light of determination burning in their eyes. Their journey was not ending, it was just beginning. Because the light the master had passed on needed to be carried further, not only to the villages nestled around the mountain, but wherever people were still suffering. And so, Chen and Dao parted ways, each choosing a different direction, so that the seeds of compassion could be sown on many different soils. Chen walked toward the city, where the streets glowed with electric lights. But people's hearts often remained dark. He sat in crowded alleys with nighttime workers, street vendors, and factory laborers exhausted after their shifts, teaching them to breathe slowly, to smile gently in each moment. Dao chose to go to the poor countryside, where people worked endlessly yet still lacked food. He joined them in harvesting rice, digging wells, and as they worked, he shared the stories of their teacher, so they could understand that happiness was not found in possessions, but in mindfulness and love for one another. Years passed, two different paths, yet Chen and Dao knew they were walking the same journey. The journey of bringing the light of emptiness into the world. Once, Chen met a young man who was about to end his life after a failure. Chen simply sat beside him, listened deeply, then gently said, "You do not need to die. You only need to let go of the self that is screaming within you. And once you release that, you will see, you have always been free." The young man broke into tears, as if pulled from the edge of a cliff. Another time, Dao sat beside a grieving mother who had lost her child. He did not say much. He only held her hand, sitting quietly beside the river, so she could see that sorrow, like water, flows in and then flows out, leaving behind a calm surface once again. And in many places, people began to whisper about the bringers of peace. But Chen and Dao never saw themselves as anything more than students, continuing the teachings of their master. One day, the two met again atop their old mountain, standing before a statue of Master Lin, lovingly built by villagers. They did not speak a word. They only bowed deeply, because in their hearts, they knew, teacher, student, the world, the universe, they had never been separate. They smiled, and then descended the mountain once more. Their journey was not finished. It would continue, across generations, through the hearts of those who had been touched, through those who could smile even in the face of their own suffering. And so, this story never truly ends, because each time someone pauses, takes one mindful breath, releases one fear, or shares a smile with another, at that very moment, Chen and Dao, Master Lin, and all those who have walked this path, continue walking together, like torches passing light from hand to hand, so that darkness will never find a place to hide. And as Chen and Dao continued along their endless path of sharing, the old temple bell still echoed through the mountain forest. But this time, its sound carried far, beyond the moss-covered roof, beyond the dirt roads and rice fields, out into the world, all the way to you, the one who is listening to this story now. Maybe you are sitting in your small room after a long, exhausting day. Maybe you are holding your phone at midnight, sleep still out of reach. Or maybe, by chance, you clicked on this video, your heart still heavy with unanswered worries. But can you see it? Right now, in this moment, you are no longer just an observer. You are a part of this story. You are not just hearing about Chen, or Tao, or Master Lin. You are the continuation. You carry the same seeds, the very same ones passed down through generations. Like Chen, you may have once lost sleep beneath the weight of your self-doubt. Like Tao, you may have once struggled to divide the world into clear lines. Like old Tam, you may have once wept for someone you loved and lost. Like the city boy, you may have once been crushed by deadlines and expectations. And like all of them, you can also choose a different path. You can pause, take one deep breath, and let your mind release some of its chains. You can realize that suffering is just like passing clouds. That success and failure are like reflections on water. And that your original mind has always been radiant, like a mirror untouched by dust. And when you understand that, you are no longer just the listener of a distant story. You become the storyteller, the one who will pass this tale to others, to loved ones, to friends, to anyone suffering near you. Maybe you will share it through words, or maybe just with a smile, a gentle hand, or a moment of true listening. But those small things, they bring the entire journey back to life. From Master Lin, to Chen, to Tao, and countless others before. Because this story was never just one person's. It has always been a river, flowing from soul to soul. From one lifetime to another. A reminder that this world may be dreamlike. But within that dream, we can live with compassion, with peace, and with boundless love. So you, yes, you, from this moment on, are no longer a spectator. You are part of the chain. You are a flame, lighting another corner of the dark. And one day, when someone else suffers as you once did, they will hear this story through you, and they, too, will become the next storyteller. After Master Lin's teachings spread beyond the temple gates, carried by the footsteps of Chen, of Tao, and through the hearts of countless people, the story continued to be told, like a flame passed from one torch to another, shining endlessly in the long night. And then, one afternoon, as Chen sat by the river watching the drifting clouds, he suddenly realized that everything that had happened, from the very first sleepless night, from the moment he faced the temple bell, from the single leaf floating on the water, from the orange glow of the sunset, from the bowl of warm porridge, from the sorrow of old Tam, from the noisy city streets to the poor and quiet countryside, from the tears of so many people, had all been woven together into one vast tapestry. And in that tapestry, there was no beginning and no end, only a circle turning without pause. Far away, Tao came to the same realization when she saw a child playing with sand by the sea. The grains slipped through the child's fingers, yet the child still laughed with pure joy, because he knew the sand was never lost. It was simply returning to the ocean. Both Chen and Tao understood that their journey was never about reaching a certain destination. It was about realizing that they had never left the universe at all. That they had always been part of life, part of this endless flow. And in that very moment, they remembered Master Lin, and his final words, "No one goes. No one returns. There is only life reflecting itself." They suddenly saw with clarity that every story told, every teaching shared, every tear shed, was just another way life was telling itself again, reminding every soul, you are not a lonely individual. You are the vast sky. You are not a single, isolated drop of water. You are the boundless ocean itself. In that instant, Chen and Dao burst into laughter, their voices echoing across the mountains and forests, as if every tragedy had turned into the playful joke of the universe. They realized that the circle did not end with them, but opened within anyone who listened, within anyone who lived, within anyone who stopped for a breath and felt the immensity within themselves. And so, the circle continues, through you, through me, through all of us, because this story has never ended, and it will never end, for it is life itself, flowing, breathing, and forever telling the tale of its own being. A circle without beginning and without end, shining with the light of emptiness and infinite love. One early morning, as mist still clung to the mountain slopes, Chen and Dao returned to the old temple where everything had begun. The temple remained the same, moss-covered roof tiles, a stone path littered with fallen leaves, the wind whispering through the cracks of the old wooden windows. But in their hearts, where Master Lin had once made a home, there now stretched a profound silence. They stepped into the main hall and saw the bronze bell hanging quietly. The very same bell Master had once used to open Chen's eyes to the illusion of the self. Dao gently placed her hand on its cold surface, then turned to Chen and gave a slight nod. No words were needed. Both understood. It was time to awaken a new echo. Chen closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and together with Dao pulled the old rope. The wooden mallet struck the bell, and in that very moment, a full, resonant sound spread in all directions. The ringing did not only travel through the mountains and forests, but also seemed to echo within their own hearts, carrying with it every memory of sleepless nights, of questions about the self, of fallen leaves upon water, of orange sunsets, of teachings about Buddha nature, about the world as a dream, about loss and compassion, about simple happiness, about the endless circle. Each reverberation seemed to hold within it the entire story, as if the sound of the bell itself had become the meeting place of every experience. Every tear and every smile, every step on the long path of teacher and disciples. And then, in that moment, Chen and Dao suddenly saw Master Lin sitting right beside them, his hair white as snow, his gentle smile, his eyes bright like the autumn moon, not distant, not absent, but fully present, right there in the sound of the bell, in their breath, in the beating of their hearts. They realized that Master had never left, for within every teaching, every speck of dust, every breeze, every breath, he was always there. The echo of the bell stretched farther and farther, as if reaching beyond the mountains and forests, crossing the fields, entering the noisy cities, touching the hearts of all those in suffering, reminding them that suffering is never truly real, that happiness is already here in this very moment, and that compassion knows no boundaries. Chen and Dao stood still, tears rolling down their cheeks, but these were tears of liberation, tears of boundless joy. They knew the journey had not ended. It would continue wherever the sound of the bell was heard, because that echo no longer belonged only to the small temple. It had become the echo of the universe, the echo of emptiness, the echo of compassion. And so, In that quiet dawn, as the final note of the bell dissolved into the air, they understood that there was no final bell at all. For every ringing was nothing more than the beginning of a new echo. Passing from one person to another, from one generation to the next, never ceasing. After the bell's echo drifted into the distance, Chen and Dao sat quietly on the temple steps, feeling its resonance ripple endlessly within them, like a wave that never fades. In that moment, they both turned their gaze toward the valley below, where tiny rooftops peeked through the morning mist, where people still carried the weight of daily worries, silent tears shed in the night, and nameless fears. Chen whispered softly, "Dao, this path, we can no longer walk it alone." Dao nodded, smiling gently. "That is true. For within every human heart lies a seed, and it only takes a single ray of light for it to awaken." And so, they turned toward you, yes. You, the one who is reading, listening, and living in the midst of a noisy world. Though your heart may sometimes feel unbearably quiet, they said, that seed is also in your heart. You may not yet realize it, but it has been there since the very first cry of your life. It is the capacity to love, the capacity to let go, the capacity to smile at suffering and to see joy even in the smallest of things. That seed is your Buddha nature. You remember the many times you felt exhausted, by worry, by comparison, by loss, by the heavy loneliness of the night. But right now, Chen and Dao remind you that none of those things are truly you. They are only passing clouds, while the true sky, vast, open, and pure, has always been there. If you are willing to sit still, to take one deep breath, to place your hand over your chest, you will feel that seed beating softly, waiting to be awakened, and from this very moment, you are no longer just a listener to some distant tale. You become the very soil in which the seed begins to sprout. You become the bearer of the light of Master Lin, of Chen, of Dao, and of thousands of years of lineage. When you smile at someone, when you forgive a mistake, when you dare to release a burden, when you drink a cup of tea in mindfulness, the seed blossoms. And in doing so, without even knowing it, you are continuing this story for the world. Because this story never ended in the mountains, never ended in the temple, never ended with a few people. It has always continued in every heart that still loves, still lives, still recognizes the vastness of emptiness. And so, in this endless circle, from teacher to student, from student to life, from life to you, the seed continues to be passed along, sprouting, growing, blooming, and one day, falling again into the waiting soil of another heart. One morning, Chen and Dao stood together at the mountain's peak, where clouds rolled below them like a vast ocean. They looked down at the world and witnessed something extraordinary. In the small villages at the mountain's foot, those who once suffered and carried unbearable burdens were beginning to change. Old Tam, who once wept endlessly for the loss of his wife, now sat on his porch smiling, his gentle eyes watching his grandchildren play, as though he could feel his wife still living beside him in every moment. The young man from the city, once crushed by the pressure of work, still labored each day, yet no longer with tension. He now treated deadlines like the drumbeat keeping rhythm for the music of his life. The young mother who once despaired after losing her child still carried sadness. But she had come to see that love had never disappeared. It was now blooming as white flowers in her garden, where she spoke with the leaves and the sky. Dao's heart stirred. She turned to Chen and whispered, "Do you see? The world is smiling." And when they looked more closely, they saw that smile not only on people's lips, but spreading through the fields, in every drop of dew, in each bird's song, in every raindrop falling on rooftops. People began treating one another differently, with fewer arguments, fewer comparisons, and instead with understanding glances, with hands reaching out to help, with words spoken gently to soothe each other. Wealthy merchants grew less afraid of losing, and shared more with the poor. Young people spent less time lost in the illusions of social media, and more time speaking truly with their families. Those once lonely discovered companionship within their own breath, within the invisible connection to the universe itself. Chen closed his eyes, listening to the wind move through the bamboo, and realized that none of these changes came from miracles outside, but simply from the moment each person allowed themselves to release, to remember that suffering is not real, and that happiness has always been right here. And when thousands, even millions of hearts release together, the world itself seems to take on a new form, no longer a place of endless struggle, but a vast garden, where every person is a flower blooming beneath the sun. Dao whispered, "If one person smiles, the world softens a little. If many smile together, the world becomes something entirely different." Chen smiled back, replying, "And if all of humanity smiles from the heart, then even hell will turn into heaven." In that moment, they felt that a smile was not merely on human lips, but was the very essence of life itself. Flowers blooming are the earth's smile. Warm rays of sunlight are the sky's smile. Crashing waves are the ocean's smile. And they, Chen, Dao, you, and I, are nothing more than the smiles of the universe, appearing for a while and then fading away. But in that fading, the light spreads everywhere, allowing the whole world to smile together. One winter night, as the wind whistled through the bamboo groves, Chen and Dao sat beside a small fire in the temple courtyard. The flickering flames lit their faces, while memories of Master Lin, of past stories, and of the people they had met, unfolded like an endless film. Chen placed a dried twig into the fire, and the flames immediately leapt higher, radiating warmth, pushing back the surrounding darkness. Dao watched the fire and whispered, "Do you see? Just one small twig, and the darkness retreats." Chen nodded, his eyes distant. "Yes, just as a single smile, a mindful breath, or a drop of compassion can ease the darkness in a human heart." They sat watching the fire, realizing that the flame belonged neither to the wood, nor to the wind, nor to the hand that struck the spark. It only existed when all the conditions came together. And when the wood was gone, the fire did not die. It simply transformed into ash, into smoke, into the lingering warmth left in the air. Dao suddenly understood, and her voice trembled as she said, "Perhaps Master Lin is like this flame. He lit the torch within us. And even though his body has turned to ash, his light remains, through us, through everyone he touched." Chen's eyes glistened with tears, but they were tears of gratitude and joy. He thought of all the people out there, old Tam, the young man in the city, the grieving mother, the poor children. Each time they found their smile again, the flame continued to burn in their hearts. And when they shared that flame with others, The world would never again be plunged into complete darkness. Tao placed her hand over her chest and said softly, "This flame now lives in our hearts, and in the hearts of everyone. It does not need to be lit again, for it has never gone out." Chen fell silent, watching as the fire dwindled, yet its warmth still spread. He whispered, "Then it must be true. When one person awakens, the whole universe shines a little brighter. And when many awaken together, darkness has nowhere left to hide." In the stillness of the winter night, the final spark rose and vanished into the air. But Chen and Dao felt no loss, for they knew the eternal flame had already become part of the universe. Part of every breath, every living heart, every seed of compassion beginning to sprout. They lifted their eyes to the starry sky, and saw that each star was also an eternal flame, burning to light up the long night, reminding humankind that light has never abandoned the world. And in that moment, Chen, Dao, Master Lin, you, and I, all became one with the same flame, the flame of emptiness and love. The eternal flame that has never been extinguished, and never will be. On a spring morning, as the first rays of sunlight slipped through the trees, Chen and Dao walked through the temple garden, the place where Master Lin had once meditated among the fragrance of flowers. The garden was now alive with color, bright golden chrysanthemums, deep red roses, wild blossoms of violet, all blooming together in the gentle breeze. Chen bent down and noticed a tiny flower on the verge of withering. Its petals were already turning yellow, trembling in the wind. Dao stopped as well and whispered, "Do you see? This flower is about to fall from its branch." At that very moment, a drop of dew slid from its petal, sparkling in the morning light, falling into the earth, soaking into the roots of the trees. Chen suddenly realized the death of the flower was not an ending, but a continuation. The petal would return to soil. The drop of dew would become water nourishing new sprouts. The pollen carried by the wind would settle in faraway places to give rise to more blooms. Dao smiled, her eyes shining. Yes, what we call withering is truly only another beginning. Chen touched the fragile flower gently, and in that touch he remembered all the stories they had lived, the sleepless night, the leaf drifting on the lake, the glow of sunsets, old Tam's sorrow, the laughter of children, the endless circle, the ringing bell. All of it was just like the journey of this flower, blossoming in brilliance, then fading, then transforming, and continuing. And he understood that the life of Master Lin was no different. Though his form had passed away, his teachings, his compassion, his light were still sprouting in countless hearts. Dao looked at Chen and smiled. We too will one day be the last flowers in this garden. And then, we will become nourishment for the new sprouts. No one is ever truly lost. Life is only reborn again and again. Chen nodded, his eyes glistening. Then our only task is to bloom fully while we can, so that when the petals fall, they may become a gift to the earth and sky. They sat quietly beside the fading flower, watching it quiver in the sunlight. In that moment, they felt a sense of wholeness, no fear, no clinging. Only the completeness of one journey closing so another might open. And when the final petal drifted down, the breeze carried its fragrance away. And Chen and Dao suddenly saw with clarity, the story had reached its end. But it was also the beginning of countless others. For just like the flower, everything they had lived, Everything they had told did not end there. It would continue to sprout in the hearts of anyone willing to listen, to live, to smile. In that instant, the garden glowed, not because of the blossoms, but because two people had come to understand the full meaning of the last flower. After the garden was filled with light from the passing of the final bloom, Chen and Dao continued along the winding mountain path until they reached a wide river. The water flowed endlessly, silver waves shimmering under the light of a young crescent moon rising over the horizon. They sat down by the riverbank, gazing at the current that never ceased, and in that stillness they saw that their lives, Master Lin's life, the lives of everyone they had met, and every story they had known, were all like this river, never stopping, never the same, yet never lost. Chen whispered, "Dao, I remember Master once said that sorrow is like drifting clouds. Happiness is like a dream. Everything is changing. Now, watching this river, I see it more clearly than ever. Life never stops. It only transforms, flowing on and on, passing from one person to another, from one generation to the next." Dao nodded, picked up a small stone, and tossed it into the water. Ripples spread outward in circles before merging with the current. He said softly, "We are just like this stone cast into the endless river. Our story, our laughter, our tears, are nothing more than ripples. But once they merge into the flow, they will travel on forever, never ceasing." Chen remained still, dropping a dry leaf upon the surface of the river, watching it drift with the current, moonlight shimmering upon the water. He smiled and said, "Just like this leaf, we too will keep flowing through villages, through cities, through the lives of people we may never know. Anyone who touches this river will touch us, even if they never realize it." Dao lifted his gaze to the star-filled sky, his voice rising like a prayer. "Then this world is not a place we only live in for a while. It is the vast river itself, where we have been, where we are, and where we will continue to flow. And anyone who releases even a single drop of love, a seed of compassion, it will join the river, and the river will carry it everywhere." Chen listened, his heart growing warm, for he now understood that the fear of endings, the fear of loss, were nothing but illusions. In truth, no one ever departs, no one ever disappears. There is only the eternal river, flowing without end, carrying everything, connecting everything, and within that flow, each being is a part of the universe, immortal in another form. The murmur of the river blended with the night wind, forming a boundless song, and within that song, Chen and Dao sat quietly, no longer feeling the need to search for anything more. They had come to understand completely. The journey had never closed. And it never would, for life itself is an endless river, flowing on and on, without end. One early morning, as Chen and Dao awoke, they stepped into the garden behind the temple, where the cool breeze and the golden light of dawn bathed the trees. On a young leaf, Chen noticed a dewdrop, glistening like a tiny crystal pearl. Within it, the entire world was reflected, the sky, the rising sun, and the image of the two of them standing together. Chen whispered, "Dao, do you see? The whole world rests inside this single drop of dew." Dao looked closely, then smiled. "But this dewdrop will soon dissolve when the sun climbs higher." A hint of sadness crossed Chen's face. But Dao continued, "To dissolve is not to be lost. It is to return to the air, to the clouds, to the rain, and one day, to become a dewdrop again. So this dewdrop never truly disappears. It only changes its form. Chen sighed softly, a lightness filling his chest, as he recalled all the teachings of Master Lin, the self. All phenomena, subject and object, Buddha nature, the world as a dream, all were just like this dewdrop. Clear, fragile, and beautiful, appearing for a brief moment, then vanishing, yet never truly gone. Dao reached out as if to touch the dewdrop, but stopped. He said, "Perhaps we do not need to touch it. It is enough to simply behold and cherish this moment. Its beauty lies in its fragility, in its brevity, in the knowing that it will soon vanish." Chen nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. Yes, we too are dewdrops, reflecting the universe, living a brief moment, then dissolving, then returning to life. What matters is not how long a dewdrop lasts, but how much light it reflects while it is here. Dao fell silent, and together they watched as the dewdrop trembled in the morning sun until it finally dissolved, leaving only the green leaf beneath it. But instead of sorrow, they felt a profound peace, for they knew the dewdrop was still present within the air, within their breath, within the clouds that would become rain, within the rivers that would continue to flow. And in that moment, Chen and Dao understood that the long journey of sleepless nights, drifting leaves, sunsets, sorrows, smiles, endless circles, the echo of bells, eternal flames, final blossoms, flowing rivers, and fragile dewdrops, all pointed to one simple truth. Life itself is a dewdrop. Fragile yet complete, fleeting yet eternal, dissolving yet indestructible. They smiled, lifted their eyes to the sky, and saw clearly that they, and I and you, all of us, are but dewdrops upon the leaf of the universe, reflecting the light of life in this very moment, and that is already enough. After the dewdrop vanished in the morning sunlight, Chen and Dao remained seated beneath the trees, their hearts filled with a peace deeper than they had ever known. They lifted their gaze toward the east, where the horizon had begun to change color, the first light of the new day painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Chen sighed gently. "The sunrise today is so beautiful." Dao nodded, his eyes shimmering. "But I believe the true sunrise is not only out there. It is unfolding right here in our hearts." Chen closed his eyes, and in that instant, he felt a sun rising in his chest, dispelling the shadows of years of fear, worry, and sorrow. Dao felt the same, a soft yet radiant light spreading from his heart, filling his body, and merging with the space around him. They opened their eyes and saw that not only the outer sky was glowing, but every leaf, every stone, every breath of air seemed to shine from within. Chen whispered, "I understand now. The sunrise outside is only a mirror, reflecting the sunrise within each of us." Dao smiled, "And when our hearts shine, the world shines as well." They remembered all the stories they had lived, sleepless nights, questions of the self, falling leaves, ringing bells, lessons of Buddha nature, sorrows and smiles, endless circles, the eternal flame, the final flower, the river, and the dewdrop. All of it, every step, had led them to this moment. The realization that dawn is not something to be awaited outside, but something that has always existed within the heart. All it takes is to release the darkness of ignorance, and the light naturally appears. Chen turned to Dao, his eyes radiant. Then our task is not to chase the sunrise, but to help others see the sunrise within their own hearts. Dao nodded, his eyes gleaming like the reflection of the sun itself. Yes, and when each person discovers the sunrise in their heart, there will be no more night in this world. They rose to their feet, walking in the brilliance of the new light, their hearts as light as clouds. And in that moment, they knew that their journey had reached fulfillment, not because they had arrived at some final destination, but because they realized the light had never left them. It had always been here. In every heartbeat, in every breath, in every smile, and in every tear shed. The sunrise outside was only the beginning of a new day. But the sunrise within the heart was the beginning of a new life, a life of freedom, of peace, of boundless love. When the dewdrop dissolved and sunlight began to spread across the mountains and forests, Chen and Dao sat upon the cold stone steps, gazing eastward. Thin clouds shifted from purple to pink, from pink to gold, until the first brilliant light of dawn burst forth, covering the world in radiance. Chen whispered, "So beautiful, yet why do I feel another sunrise? Not out there, but rising within my own chest?" Dao smiled, his eyes glowing. "Yes, because the true sunrise is not only the sun in the sky. It is when a human heart opens, when the shadows of fear, of sorrow, of clinging dissolve. And in that very instant, the light appears." Chen closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and for the first time in many years felt clearly that within his chest, a small sun was beginning to rise. Its rays reached into the hidden corners once filled with worry, struggle, longing, and despair. Dao too closed his eyes, sensing within himself another dawn. Not loud, not blinding, but steady and warm. It gently swept away the chill of the long nights he had endured. When they opened their eyes, they saw that everything around them was also shining brighter, the green leaves more vivid, the blossoms more radiant, the stones beneath their feet more luminous, and even the wind carried the sound of a new song. Chen whispered, "So the sky out there only mirrors the sky within our hearts. When the heart is dark, even if the sun rises, we still feel endless night. But when the heart shines, even in the middle of darkness, we can see the dawn." Dao was moved to tears. Then happiness is not something we wait for tomorrow. It is seeing the sunrise here and now, within ourselves. They recalled the long road they had walked, Chen's sleepless nights, the confusion of the self, the leaf upon the water teaching them about no self, the orange sunset teaching them the unity of subject and object, the moon by the river teaching them of loss and compassion, the bowl of warm porridge reminding them of simple joy, the endless circle, the eternal flame, the last flower, the fragile dewdrop. All of it had been steps leading them here to one simple yet profound truth: the sunrise has never been outside. It has always been in the heart. And when each person dares to let go of the night of ignorance within, the dawn will appear on its own. Chen turned to Dao, his voice trembling. If each person discovers the sunrise in their heart, this world will never again know night. Dao nodded, his eyes reflecting the sun rising on the horizon. And when the world knows no night, even hell will turn into heaven. They rose, hearts light as the wind, walking in the brilliance of the morning. In that moment, they understood that their long journey had reached fulfillment, not because they had arrived at a destination, but because they had realized the light had never left them. It had always been there. In every heartbeat, in every breath, in every tear and every smile. The outer sunrise would set, but the sunrise within would never fade. As long as one knows how to return, how to breathe, how to smile. And from that moment on, Chen and Dao no longer searched. For they had seen, they had lived, they had become the sunrise itself. That evening, after a long day of walking through villages, listening and sharing stories with the people, Chen and Dao returned to the temple. They sat together under the veranda, gazing at the night sky filled with stars. Neither spoke a word, they simply sat, listening to the steady hum of crickets in the grass, the whisper of wind through bamboo, the quiet rhythm of their own hearts beating. At first, Chen wished to speak, to tell Dao of the people he had met, of the changes he had seen, of the smiles that had returned. But he stopped, realizing no words were needed. This silence was already enough. Dao felt the same. His heart overflowed, but instead of putting it into words, he chose silence. And in that silence, he saw more clearly than any language could express that they were fully present in this moment. No past, no future, only the pure present. A shooting star streaked across the sky, leaving a brief trail of light before vanishing into the night. Yet neither of them made a wish, for they understood the star too was only part of the silence. And the true wonder was not in speaking or asking, but in seeing the vast stillness of the sky. In that moment, Chen remembered Master Lin's words, "When you have nothing left to say, nothing left to seek, nothing left to prove, silence itself becomes the deepest voice." Dao closed his eyes and felt that within this silence there was the voice of Master Lin, the voice of 1,000 years of scriptures, the heartbeat of millions of beings, the very breath of the universe. He realized that silence was not emptiness, it was the ground of everything. The place from which every sound was born, where every word began, where every smile and every tear first arose. Chen sat beside him, his heart swelling with unspeakable gratitude, gratitude for the sorrows he had endured, so that he could now understand peace, gratitude for having once been lost, so that he could find the path, gratitude for having Dao by his side, so that the journey was never lonely, gratitude for silence, for showing him that everything was already whole. They remained like that for a long time, until the night wind calmed, the moon grew brighter, and the stars seemed nearer. They realized that in silence, every truth had spoken, every question had been answered, every sorrow had been dissolved. No words were needed, for silence itself was the deepest connection between them and their master, between them and the world, between them and their boundless nature. That night, after sitting in silence, Chen and Dao still did not return indoors. They lay upon the cold stone steps, gazing upward at the vast sky. A velvet cloth embroidered with thousands of points of light. The breeze carried the fragrance of wildflowers, the scent of damp earth after rain, the stillness of the mountains. In that moment, Chen closed his eyes and heard a sound. It was not the wind, not the insects, not the distant temple bell, but a whisper from deep within, as if the entire universe leaned close to speak. Dao felt it too. He opened his eyes and looked at Chen, and no words were needed. For they both heard the same message, a gentle reminder that everything was already enough. already complete. Nothing was missing. Nothing needed to be added. For life was already perfect in every breath. The whisper used no words. Yet it was clearer than any teaching. It said, "You are not small. You are the universe itself. You are not alone. For every star, every leaf, every drop of water is here with you. You need not search, for what you seek has always been within you from the beginning." Chen lay still, tears streaming, for he knew that all his questions, his struggles, his long journey, had led him only to this moment, to hear this whisper. Doubt trembled too, for he felt his heart beating with the very rhythm of the sky. No longer a limited body, but the whisper itself echoing across space. They lay quietly, breathing slowly, and in each breath they felt the universe breathing with them. Above, one star shone brighter than the rest, radiating a gentle light like the smile of Master Lin, like the embrace of life itself, like the hand of the infinite resting upon their shoulders. The whisper of the universe continued, not loud, not forceful, but steady, like the flowing river, like the shining moon, like the rise and fall of breath. "You are home." Chen and Dao looked at one another. They did not speak, but their smiles were their answer. They knew the long journey had closed, but at the same time, it had opened into countless new journeys. From that moment on, each breath, each silence, each smile was their way of listening to and retelling the whisper of the universe to the world. On a pristine morning, before the sunlight had pierced through the thick mist covering the mountain slopes, Chen and Dao sat upon a great stone, looking down at the valley, where a river of clouds rolled like a vast white ocean. Neither spoke a word, they simply sat still, listening to the rhythm of their own breath. And in that moment, Chen suddenly realized that the breath flowing in was never his own, it was a gift from the trees, from the mountains and forests, from the oceans, from millions of years of life itself. The breath flowing out was not lost either. It became nourishment for other beings, became part of the endless cycle. Dao felt the same, with every inhale and exhale. He understood that he had never been separate from the world, that what he called self was nothing more than a single leaf on the tree of life, sustained by its trunk and branches, and in turn sustaining the whole. They sat quietly for a long time, and in the stillness of the mountains, their breath seemed to blend with the wind, with the earth, with the heartbeat of the universe itself. Chen whispered, "Dao, have you noticed? From the moment we were born until now, we have really only done one thing: breathe. And each breath is the thread connecting us to eternity." Dao shivered, for he suddenly felt that every breath was part of a stream flowing through countless generations. The breath he drew today may once have belonged to someone who lived 1,000 years ago. And the breath leaving him now would tomorrow nourish a sprout, a child, some living being. He smiled. Then no breath has ever belonged to us alone. All breathing belongs to life itself, passing through us, reminding us that we have never been apart from eternity. Chen closed his eyes and felt his whole being dissolve into that current. All boundaries disappeared, leaving only a serene completeness. In that moment, they realized that enlightenment was not some distant state, but simply living fully within a single breath, seeing in it the entire universe in motion. Dao placed his hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat merge with the rhythm of breath, and whispered, "If every person on earth could stop for just one true breath, wars would quiet, Hatred would dissolve, for in that breath, everyone would see they are not separate beings, but one with all. Chen opened his eyes and smiled gently. Yes, the breath is the doorway that brings us home to life itself. By simply breathing, we touch eternity. They remained seated until the sun rose high, tearing apart the mist, illuminating the mountains and forests. And they knew that the breath had opened for them the gate into immortality, not the immortality of the body, but the immortality of life's endless flow, where they, and I and you, and the whole universe have never been apart. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves began to fall, Chen and Dao sat upon a hillside, gazing out at the vast fields of ripening rice. The sky was clear and blue, not a cloud in sight, only the gentle breeze carrying with it the sweet fragrance of the countryside. Chen said softly, "Dao, do you see? The wind blows everywhere, touches everything, yet no one has ever been able to hold it." Dao remained silent. He stretched out his hand, as if to catch the breeze as it slipped through his fingers. When he opened his palm, nothing remained, only the cool sensation lingering upon his skin. He smiled. The wind is truly like life. We cannot hold it, we cannot control it, but we can always feel it. Chen nodded, his eyes shining with understanding. Yes, and the wind is also like love, like happiness. We cannot bind it, we cannot make it stay. But when we open our hearts, it passes through us, cooling, free, and gentle. They sat quietly, listening to the wind whispering through the bamboo, the rustling of rice stalks, and realized that the wind was the language of the universe, a language without words, yet understood by all, felt by all. Chen remembered the years gone by, the teachings of Master Lin, the lessons of emptiness, the encounters with loss, the circles of continuation, the dewdrops and the rivers, the eternal flames and the sunrise within the heart, all of them. All were like this wind, invisible, ungraspable, yet always present, always touching, always spreading. Dao whispered, "Perhaps we are also like the wind. We come and go, leaving no trace, but we can stir the branches of a tree, cool a rooftop, sweep the dust from someone's heart. And that is enough." Chen smiled, his eyes sparkling. If every person could live like the wind, not clinging, not binding, simply passing through to bring comfort to the world, how beautiful life would be. The wind rose again, lifting a few golden leaves and carrying them far toward the horizon. Chen and Dao watched them drift away, their hearts overflowing with a nameless peace. In that moment, they understood. The unseen wind did not only touch their skin, it swept through their souls, carrying away burdens, fears, attachments, leaving behind a vast emptiness, yet an emptiness filled with freedom. And so, they knew that their journey had never had a beginning, nor would it ever have an end. It was only like the wind, coming, going, passing through, and echoing forever. One winter night, as the cold wind howled through the cracks of the old wooden doors, Chen and Dao sat together in the main hall of the temple, the very place where Master Lin had once given his teachings. A single candle burned upon the altar, its small flame flickering yet radiant, casting their long shadows upon the wooden walls. Chen gazed at the flame and whispered, "Dao, do you see? Even one small light is enough to drive away the darkness around it." Dao nodded, his eyes fixed on the trembling glow. and darkness can never swallow the light. As long as the light remains, the darkness must retreat. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the wind outside the veranda, the faint sound of insects, and within their hearts, the candle seemed to become a symbol of their entire journey. They remembered Chen's sleepless nights filled with worry, Dao's restless questions without answers, old Tam's tears when he lost his beloved, the young man crushed beneath the weight of his work, and countless others drowning in sorrow. All of it had been thick darkness. And yet, a single spark, from the words of their master, from a mindful breath, from a simple smile, had dissolved it all. Chen whispered, "Then perhaps our task is not to chase away all the darkness in life, but only to keep this light from ever going out." Dao's heart swelled with gratitude, for he realized that this light was not only the candle before them, but the flame within their own hearts, the flame Master Lin had kindled. The flame nourished by every story, every experience, every tear, and every smile. He said softly, "If each person in the world could keep a small light alive within them, then the world would never be plunged into complete darkness." Chen smiled, his eyes glistening, and when those lights come together, they will form an entire sky full of stars. The candle kept burning, its flame unsteady yet steadfast, as if to say that no matter how fierce the storm outside, as long as even one flame endures, darkness will never truly prevail. In the silence of the winter night, Chen and Dao sat side by side, watching the candle burn down to its final drop of wax. And they understood, the flame did not die. It only transformed. It would continue living within them, within those they met, within anyone who dared to guard a light in their heart. And in that moment, they knew their long journey had reached fulfillment, not because the darkness was gone, but because they had learned how to keep the light alive, forever. Even if it was only one small flame in the night. The next morning, as the sun rose above the mountains, Chen and Dao left the temple, walking down the dirt path toward the fields. The air was fresh, birds sang joyfully, and dewdrops still shimmered upon the leaves. As they crossed a small wooden bridge over a stream, Dao suddenly stopped and tossed a pebble into the water. A soft splash echoed, and ripples spread outward in widening circles, one after another, until they dissolved into the current. Dao smiled. "Do you see? Just one small stone can create countless ripples, reaching farther than we expect." Chen listened to the sound of the stream and nodded. "Yes, it is the same with what we do. However small it may seem, it leaves an echo in someone's life, and that echo continues to spread." They walked on, and when they reached the village, children ran to greet them, their bright smiles like ripples moving outward. Chen remembered the very first time Master Lin had told him that the human heart is like a lake, a single thought, a single word, a single action creates ripples that travel endlessly. Now Chen understood. Every word of compassion, every mindful breath, every look of understanding created invisible ripples, moving from one person to another, reaching places they would never know. Dao said quietly, "Perhaps this is why Master told us that we do not need to do anything grand. We only need to live with a true heart. For a true heart creates echoes that no one can measure." Chen smiled, feeling a steady faith rise within him. Then it does not matter how far we travel, or how many things we accomplish. As long as we keep this heart bright, The echoes will spread on their own. They sat by the stream, listening to the flowing water, and in its gentle music they heard the echoes of their own hearts, the echoes of days lived, of tears and smiles, of deep lessons, all woven together into an invisible melody that would never end. And they understood. When a heart resounds with compassion, the universe responds with peace. And that echo will remain, even when the body dissolves, for it has already become part of the great symphony of life. One summer night, when the sky was as clear as crystal, Chen and Dao sat together atop the highest mountain, where the wind roared freely and space opened into infinity. Above their heads, millions of stars sparkled, their distant yet vivid light shining down like the gentle eyes of the universe watching over them. They sat in silence, until Chen let out a quiet sigh. "Dao, do you see? The universe is so vast that we are nothing more than tiny specks of dust. And yet, within each speck, the whole sky is reflected." Dao smiled, his eyes glowing beneath the starlight. "Not only reflected, we are dancing with them." Chen looked at him in surprise. "Dancing?" Dao nodded. "Look, every star follows its orbit. Every planet moves through space. Every breath we take is part of that rhythm. Everything, the wind blowing, the river flowing, the beating of your heart and mine, are all steps in the endless dance of life." Chen fell silent, gazing upward at the star-filled sky, and suddenly saw that the stars were no longer separate, but revolving together, singing a silent symphony. In that moment, he felt himself moving with the universe, that every gesture, every thought, every smile was part of this wondrous dance. Dao whispered, "Master Lin once said that emptiness is not mere nothingness. It is the music for the dance of all things. If we truly listen, we will see that we have never stood outside. We are dancing in every moment." Chen closed his eyes and felt the wind sweep across his skin like the hand of the universe leading him. He surrendered completely, letting his heart, his body, his breath dissolve into the invisible rhythm. Dao did the same, and in that instant, they were no longer just two people sitting on a mountain peak. They became two tiny stars, spinning within the infinite sky. They saw clearly that there was no boundary between themselves and the Milky Way, between themselves and the light of distant stars. It was all one vast dance, where every living being was a step, every smile a note of music, every tear a deep melody, all woven into a symphony without end. And in that moment, Chen and Dao burst into laughter. Their laughter was carried away by the wind, echoing like a new instrument added to the grand orchestra of the cosmos. They understood then that their journey had never been merely about seeking happiness or liberation. It was about learning to join fully in this dance, sometimes powerful, sometimes gentle, sometimes silent, but always in harmony. The stars kept turning. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like a silver ribbon. And in that moment, Chen and Dao realized they had become part of the eternal dance, a dance with no beginning and no end. Only life, light, and love moving together, forever dancing within the boundless emptiness. One early morning, Chen and Dao descended from the mountain peak, walking eastward, where the horizon opened into an immense sea they had never seen before. Before them, the ocean stretched endlessly, waves rolling without pause, while the morning sun reflected into countless shimmering rays. Chen stood still, his eyes glistening. Tao, I feel so small before the sea. Tao was silent for a moment, then smiled. Perhaps we are not small at all. We are the sea itself. Look closely. Each wave is still the ocean. Just as each of us is part of boundless life. They sat upon the sand, listening to the sound of the waves crashing like the great heartbeat of the universe. Chen closed his eyes, and in that instant, he heard the waves not outside, but within his own chest. Tao placed his hand upon his heart and whispered, "Do you hear it? The waves make no distinction between inside and outside. It is all one rhythm, one flow." Chen was startled, then laughed, realizing he had never been apart from the ocean, that the sea was not only beyond the horizon, but flowing within his veins. His breath, his tears, his smile. They sat watching each wave rise and fall, appear and dissolve, like fleeting lifetimes that never truly stop. Tao said, "A wave is born, a wave fades, but the ocean has never been lost. A person is born, a person passes, yet life has never ceased." Chen nodded, his eyes shining. Then when we see ourselves as waves, we fear, for every wave breaks. But when we see ourselves as the sea, we are eternal, for the sea never vanishes. Those words echoed like a bell within them, dissolving the final knots of fear. Chen felt the dread of death melt away like salt into water, leaving only boundless peace. Tao felt a joy no longer tied to anything outside, for he knew that at every moment, in every place, the sea was already within him. They sat together, watching the sun climb higher, its golden light spreading across the vast waters. And in that moment, they understood that their long journey had only led them to one simple yet profound truth. We are the ocean itself. The waves are only temporary forms, appearing, dissolving, and appearing again, while the sea remains vast and eternal. And when a human being can live as the sea, there is no more fear, no more clinging, no more loneliness, for one knows they have never been apart from the great expanse of life. That cool autumn afternoon, Chen and Dao arrived at a small village, where people were gathering around a fire to warm themselves and prepare their evening meal. They were invited to sit by the hearth, where the flames danced, sometimes leaping high and bright, sometimes flickering faint and weak, sometimes sinking into glowing embers. Chen watched in silence, entranced by the dance of fire. Dao suddenly asked, "Do you see? The flame is fading." Chen nodded with a hint of sorrow. "Yes, soon there will be nothing left but ashes." Yet as the gray ash covered the embers, a faint red glow still lingered beneath. Hidden, waiting, a villager took a small stick, gently stirred the ashes, and blew softly. Suddenly the fire leapt back to life, brighter, warmer, as if it had never gone out. Dao's eyes widened. "Do you see? The flame never truly died. It only rested in the ashes, waiting for someone to awaken it." Chen sat motionless, his eyes glistening, and in that instant he remembered Master Lin, and all the people they had met, the sorrows that seemed unbearable, the losses that felt permanent, the nights that seemed endless. Yet with just one mindful breath, one smile, one hand reaching out, the fire had always returned. Dao whispered, "Then within every human heart, there is always a hidden ember. However buried beneath layers of pain, it has never gone out. With just one breeze, one mindful breath, it can glow again." Chen smiled, his heart warm, and if we know how, we can help rekindle the flame in another's heart, and then they, in turn, will ignite the flame for others. In this way, the light will never be lost. They watched the fire blaze, while ashes lifted and drifted in the wind, and they understood, ashes were not an ending, but the soil from which the flame could be reborn. They realized that people were the same. They may fall, they may falter, they may seem broken, yet deep within, there is always an ember, a power of renewal, an indestructible light. In that moment, Chen and Dao knew their task was not to bring fire from somewhere else, but to help each person recognize and awaken the flame already within them. The fire crackled, the wind passed through, the light illuminated the small kitchen, and Chen and Dao smiled, for they knew the light had never gone out. It had only been waiting to be awakened from the ashes. One freezing winter night, as the wind howled through the cracks of the old thatched roof of the house where the villagers had offered them shelter, the fire in the hearth had nearly burned out. Only a heap of gray ashes remained, covering a few charred pieces of wood. The light seemed to have vanished, and the room sank into darkness, making Chen shiver for a moment, thinking the fire had died. But Dao sat down, took a small stick, and gently stirred the ashes. From deep within, a faint red ember appeared, weak, fragile, yet stubbornly alive, like a quiet soul breathing its last. Dao bent close and blew softly, and to their amazement, the ember flared into a new flame, small at first, then quickly spreading to the surrounding coals. And within moments, the fire blazed again, filling the room with warmth and light. Chen stared at the fire, his eyes glistening. "Dao, do you see? The flame never truly went out. It only hid itself in the ashes, waiting for someone to awaken it." Dao nodded, his eyes shining. "Yes, it is the same with the human heart. No matter how deeply it is covered by suffering, despair, or ignorance, there is always an ember, a spark that has never been lost. With just one breath of compassion, one mindful breeze, it will flare alive again." Chen remembered the many lives they had witnessed. Old Tam, who had wept endlessly, thinking he could not survive after his wife passed, yet found his smile again when he realized love had never left him. The young man in the city, once crushed by pressure, ready to throw himself from the balcony, but saved by a single moment of listening. The grieving mother who thought her inner flame had died with her child. Yet one day, by the river, she discovered that love was still there, becoming the sky, the flowing water, every breath she took. All of them were like the ember within the ashes. It seemed as though the flame had vanished, but in truth, it was only waiting for a breath to awaken it. Dao whispered, "Perhaps our task is not to bring fire from outside, but simply to remind each person that the flame has always been in their heart." Chen nodded, overwhelmed with gratitude, for he realized that even he, in his sleepless nights long ago, had once been nothing more than a faint ember. Yet thanks to Master Lin, thanks to a bell, a teaching, a compassionate gaze, the flame within him had flared back to life, guiding his path until today. The wind outside still blew, but it no longer felt cold, for the fire now glowed brightly, filling the room with warmth. Its light reflected in their hearts, and they understood. Ashes were never an ending, but proof of the flame's endurance. Only by passing through ashes could the light become even more steadfast. Chen smiled, his voice deep and warm. Tao, if every person in this world knew that they still carried an ember within their heart, no one would ever despair again. Tao softly replied, and if each person knew how to rekindle the flame in another's heart, then darkness would never find a place to stay. They sat in silence, watching the fire dance, and in its light, they saw their path clearly, not to fight against darkness, but to keep the flame alive, even when buried in ashes, so that from there, the light would spread endlessly across the world, eternal and indestructible. My dear friend, the journey we have walked together is not a collection of separate stories, but a series of doors, each opening to reveal one simple truth: suffering is nothing more than passing clouds. And happiness has always been here, in every breath, every smile, every glance, from the ringing of a bell, to a fragile dewdrop, to the eternal flame, to the dance of the stars and the sea within us. All of it has only been to remind us that we have never been apart from the universe, never truly alone, and that the light has never left our hearts. If one story today has touched you, let it become a seed within you. And if you wish for those seeds to sprout, to grow, to spread, then stay with me, in this small garden of ours, where we will keep listening, keep telling, keep lighting lamps in the night,